before me, I have a Battletech Mecha. Behind me, in amongst the junk, is the book that was based on, Battletech 3055, and on the front cover is the Behemoth mech, which you can see there, and 100-ton clan mech. I think it's got 3 PPCs, particle projection cannons, but I can't remember if it's heavy lasers or cannons. However, that's what it's set up on there. And I have the model here in front of me, which I've been painting. So as a quick recap, so essentially I wasn't going to copy this exactly. I just wanted to try and get this done quickly and use a pin wash technique on an airbrushed Battletech Mecha. So that's what I've been doing here. And so I went through various stages. To start with, I airbrushed it with 3 colours, which I still have to hand, which was, the base was this colour called Sick Green from Vallejo in their Model Air that was airbrushed on. After the model was primed, I airbrushed that green on. Then I highlighted that, well, just with a very, there was no detail in the highlighting. I simply stuck on some duck egg into the airbrush and then sprayed it onto the top areas of the mech. So that's Vallejo duck egg in their Model Air range, so for airbrushing. And then I used some plasticine, which I've still got the, not plasticine, similar stuff, blue tack, the stuff you stick posters on the wall with. So I used that to mask areas off by squidging it onto the model, and then airbrushed with this khaki brown as the final colour on there to give me basically just a sort of basic camo between the green and the brown. That was phase 1 2 days ago, 3 or 4 days ago. Then a couple of days ago I came back and I used these oils, these guys from Griffin Oils, and these in their Alkyd range. So I used these to pin wash, which is basically by using thinners. I happen to use this low odour thinners here, which I've had for years, to hardly ever go through the stuff, and mix it with this stuff to make a wash, but you use it in very sparing amounts just to go into the panel lines. So that was the end of the last session. So if I switch down now, I'll go through the next one, which is going to be chipping. So here we go. Right, so this is the progress so far. And as you can see from this sort of tabletop height, it's looking quite decent with its panel lines detailed. It's still got some gloss in there because I mixed gloss medium, well, gloss varnish I mixed into the airbrush paints. And the idea with that was to allow, by having a gloss surface, it allowed the pin wash to run more smoothly using that sort of capillary action to go into the panel lines. So I zoom in. Then get some focus. Right, so now you can see that camo with the basic brown on the green. Oh, that's the other thing I did in the last session. I also put some of these water slide decals on in various locations, including these ones from Fighting Piranha Graphics, which is the Clan Jade Falcon symbol. One of those up there on the corner, which is, I think, is in the same position or similar position on the book cover. And then down there, Fred, I think it was Fred Richards, joined, and he told me on the live video to put one on the right leg, or was it the left leg? Oh, I can't remember. It's probably right shoulder, left leg, which is the standard Canon sort of positioning for Battletechs to have their insignia on the side. So you can see the pin wash has gone, which was that black and brown oil wash, has gone into all of the panel lines, and basically I just touched it very lightly with it into the lines, and that drew the black oil paints into all of the panel lines, and it kind of paints it for you. It's a very straightforward technique, but you have to see the previous video to see that. It's had a couple of days drying, and it's quite interesting. I won't show myself sniffing it, but oil paints that have the what is it? Linseed oil, I think it is in there. It's actually quite a pleasant smell as it's drying. It's not chemical at all. It kind of smells nearly like olive oil or something. Anyway, so I think it's a quite pleasant smell as the oil dries. So I can still smell that coming off this now, and that's where all the oil, and that's just a very small amount of oil paint that's gone into those panel lines. So in terms of just a quick recap on next steps and how I'm feeling about it, I think as I sort of dived into it, I rushed the airbrushing, and I could have done with doing a highlighter shade on the brown while it was masked, just to give the brown a bit of a lift. And you can see, where's a good angle? You can see here, I mean, it's not a massive difference, but you can see that the duck egg on that green has given that a bit of a highlight shade there. And the same thing would have happened if I'd highlighted up the brown as well. But it's no big deal. It's looking fine. I was trying to do it quickly, and I was live on camera. So in hindsight, I probably would have used a lighter brown on top of that brown to just give it a little bit of a top shade. The smell is okay for the first few hours. I like it, and even now, this is 2 days on, I can still faintly smell the oil off it, which is interesting. Other points worth mentioning, which I totally failed to mention before in all the last about 4 hours videos on this. These areas here, which have got these kind of mini discs, which I'll zoom into a bit more actually. Yeah, so you can see them now. These are brass, etched brass, and you can actually see on the side still where I've clipped them out of the frame that they came into. And I think they're cool. I think they're landing lights, but I saw them as an etched brass kit, and I glued them on here years ago. In fact, they've been glued on there for about 10 years while this has been sat in the cabinet unpainted. And I thought they looked a bit like heat sinks or something, although of course a big mech like this would have many heat sinks. I just thought representatively they looked potentially like heat sinks, so I glued them on there for a bit of fun. Oh yes, if you're using large quantities, you're going to get quite a strong smell off the oil paint, definitely, Graham. So otherwise, I did actually put some plastic card. That's the other thing I changed on this mech, down the side of the sort of chin. I don't know why I did it. I did it years ago, and I thought, oh, maybe it would make it look like the armor was sort of boosted up a bit along the side of the cockpit and the canopy there. So those strips I'd put on. I think I put that grille on there. That's another brass etched part. I think there's another mini grille. Well, there's 2 little things here that I put on, brass etched. These are actually lights. And oh yeah, thanks. These lights I haven't done anything with, but they are brass etched again. But what you're meant to do with them is put them on a vehicle and then drop a little bit of super glue into that reservoir on there, and it sits proud and makes it look like a little light with a sort of shine behind it. But I haven't bothered doing that. I've just sort of painted over it as if it's not there, but it just looks like detailing now on the panel. So yeah, so there are a few things I did just for whatever reasons years and years ago when I put this thing together, where I thought I'd glue these extra bits on. They don't really show up. I mean, you're not going to see those from the tabletop sort of height. Yeah, so getting on with the project then. So next step, we'll zoom out first to show you what I've got before me. So I have, the next phase is chipping. So this is the kind of chipping that people do on sort of big tanks, model kits, just to make it look like something's a bit weathered and worn and battle worn. So I thought while I got these, while I'm doing this, I would do it potentially around the sort of edge of the gun barrels. I'll do it on the chin maybe, where this is walked through trees and brush and shrubberies, around the toes on the feet, around the top areas. Maybe, although I can imagine the pilot probably has a back entrance into the mech. Potentially people have walked up the front here, so I'll do some chipping up there as people have done repairs, I think field repairs, and it's got a bit worn out. And also on the side I can see there's sort of grill holes and things, and I'll do some chipping around there and around those sort of sides, calf muscle areas of the legs that may have sort of crushed through stone and debris while walking around. So to do that, I need a lighter colour than the pale green, and I've got a kind of a bluish colour called Frostbite from Privateer Press P3, which I'm going to use very fine amounts on for chipping. Then inside that Frostbite I shall put some Ironhole Grey just to shade the chip, and potentially on the brown I'm going to use this Bloodstone to chip, and then maybe the same Ironhole Grey to sort of darken those chips as well, just to look like the paint's been damaged a bit. So I'm not really doing the kind of edge highlighting which I normally do in some of my previous videos. This is a slightly different technique. If I was doing edge highlighting, I'd be going down all the edges with a fine brush and highlighting up the edge panels, which can make a model pop as well. But in this instance I'll do the chipping style, which half looks like an edge panel edging, and half looks like a chip. I think you'll see what I mean when I put it on there. Then the other things I'm going to do tonight, I've got all these washes around here, and these are acrylic washes rather than the oils that I did before. These I'm just going to put on sparingly. These are from Life Colour acrylic wash. One I particularly like, Blue Burned Exhaust, I might put around the weapons to look like heat damage or smoke damage from firing weapons. I have another colour, another one here, which I've always liked using, Kerosene, which is like a blue. It comes out with some interesting effects when you use it on models. I might put that around certain areas to look like, I don't know, hydraulic fluids coming out somewhere. Not so sure where I'll use that. And I also have a Smoke, which is kind of a thin black wash, and Burnt Brown, which I sometimes put on. So yeah, that's that there. So I need to, so that will go on after I've done the chipping, because that will help me weather down the chipping a bit as well, rather than just having very bright chipping around. So the first colour to use is the Frostbite, and I've got a 000 Tamiya modelling brush. And yeah, I always sing praises of these. No one pays me any money to do that, but these last me years. They're sable, really nicely made. The kind of got a wooden stock bit there. This one's getting a bit grubby. Sorry, a metal bit there for the sable to go into, and found them to be brilliant. So yeah, long lasting, good recommendation if anybody's interested in those. Tend to have to get them on eBay, imported from Japan. I mean, they are on sale in the UK, I'm sure in the US as well, and all other good stores. Yeah. Oh, hi there. Someone else saying good evening, and hydraulic fluids around joints. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. We won't start talking about arthritic joints, which we did a couple of days ago. Sort of a podcast on painting sci-fi battle mecha turned into Graham and I discussing our different ailments. So right, I'm going to use what I've got here before, which I've got set up in front of me, which is a wet palette. I've got a couple of magnets stashed in there, try and make a bit of room here. And these little fridge magnets, and they hold down this wet palette for me. And this has just been makeshift made from a piece of plastic from a miniature box, and I've got in the base of it a sheet of blotting paper, and then a sheet of tracing paper on the top, and then water has been sprayed onto the blotting paper underneath. And then what you get is the ability to put your paint on there, and it will stay moist. And just beside me over here I have my pot of water. So I just decanted some in there using a big brush, sticking it in there. I don't really need much of this at all, because it's tiny chips that I'm going to do, which don't need a lot of paint to achieve. There we go, back in focus. I'm trying to make myself some room. Right, now this is the bit where for about half an hour I try and get my eye in, because that's quite difficult to do. Oh, I also put some glazed medium in to the wet palettes, because I prefer to use a bit of glazed medium to mix in with the paint rather than water to thin it. It just stays a bit stronger and doesn't get too washed out. Just I've got used to doing that over the years. I used to use Privateer Press used to have in their P3 paint range their own kind of retardant, they called it, I think. And I used that for years, but then I ran out, and then I just bought the glazed medium from Vallejo, and that works just the same with their paints. So yeah, bear with me as I slowly bring myself online. It's like a ancient slumbering android beginning to get my painting skills in and getting my eye in on here. So yeah, looking at areas that would be chipped at the front here. So the nose and the side of this front exhaust, I'm just going to start doing little small chips. And the technique is basically not to try and paint a chip, really. It's just to let the brush fall on there with a small amount of paint on it. You can also do sort of stripe type scratches. Could be from a blast. Again, it's just a case of doing it as lightly as possible in terms of amount of paint, but also not trying to be too planned. If you really, you can. I used to do like I used to do chips where I used to really paint the detail into a chip, but that does take time. So maybe across the top of the canopy here, it's taken a couple of bits of wear and tear from something that's maybe walked through some woods or something. I don't know, making it up as I go along. Because the duck egg is quite light, I use this very light palish blue. I didn't really go pure white, just to sort of dump it on, but it's quite, I imagine it's quite difficult for you to see this sort of pale colour going on. A bit too much wet in that bit. And you might want some bigger. I mean, it's not a case of always going in with the very small dots. And if you're doing the fine lines, it is a case of slowly sort of building them up. Yeah, and as I was saying earlier, these will get a wash of one of those sort of weathering thin inks that I've got as well. So it doesn't matter that they look too stark. And just be sparing as well. What I don't want to do is put weathering over the whole lot. But at the same time, it's not like I'm going for historic realism or anything. And this is massive as well. I don't know how tall this would be. 90 meters tall, perhaps. If there's any Mecha aficionados that can say, oh yes, a clan behemoth. They're 94.6 meters from chin to turret or what have you. So you can see where I've sort of been building them up around the front. And yeah, it is a case of careful, slow approach, and eventually it will have a wash, and the extra layers will take off some of this shine as well, because at the moment I can see myself, at least anyway, I can see a lot of shine from the base colours on there that and that shine will dull down, the whole thing will come together a little bit more evenly. This is that bit of the video I do all the time. I fall into the trap, and that's that, you know, I've got a work in progress and I start making excuses for why it doesn't look perfect already, which is that story of my life really. And just be patient with it really, and don't worry about the odd mistake. I think a bit like the pin washes I did in the last one. Some of it is just letting the brush do the thing. That was a bit wet. Yeah, you don't really want wet, runny paint when you're doing a chip. It starts to look more like you're putting like a dusting on there or something. So you can see already all around this sort of area I've gone on a bit heavier. It's making some of the details pop at the same time as sort of giving it a kind of weathered look. The gloss that's underneath there is kind of shining through quite a lot at this point in the strong light as well. But you can see it looks sort of like scratches and pits and bits along the side of the barrel there as well. Yeah, this section here, this grill, that was something I added on. It was a brass etched grill. So I think I mentioned earlier, it's both looking a bit like I mean, you're killing two birds with one stone. It's looking a bit like a highlight on the edge of the panel, whilst also providing a degree of chipping. So this is where you have to take a little bit more care when if you're trying to get a chip line on there. Did I even have that in the film? No. Yeah, so I've put some damage along the side of the barrel in line format, and then up against the cowling. Is that the best way to call that? always wondering really what the best time of night is to do these. It's obviously it's Friday, and here in the UK, what is it, 8:45? No, it's 9:15. And I'm always thinking, probably my sort of any American viewers are either not home from work if they're sort of West Coast, still sort of midday, early afternoon, or what have you, and then East Coast are probably sort of just coming home. 40 to 50 foot in height. Okay. Yeah, they're big. So this cowling sort of area over the top of the mech definitely put some scratches and damage from there. That was something I used to enjoy with Battletech, was the sort of terrain layout and the fact they kind of encouraged the use of trees and various terrain types in the game. So I can imagine, I say when I used to play it years ago, I used to always have in mind, I'm now stomping through the trees, I'm obviously sort of tearing through some big branches, maybe bashing off the sides of the weapons. And there were two types of wood, I think. Light woods, heavy woods, I think, for the Battletech game. Everyone heads for the lakes, yeah, to stay cool. Especially if you haven't got enough heat sinks to... yeah, I had some good games of that where we had people definitely piling down to the lakes to try and take a good position. It's interesting. I think that's where when this kind of clan mechs came out, they had a lot more heat sinks, didn't they? Have double heat sinks, and so they could fire all their lasers at once. And then they had those sort of medium pulse lasers, were they, which were better and hit more readily. So you had a whole series of things that made them much better on the battlefield. Oh, I've gone off camera. So although this looks quite a slow method, you could panel line probably, or panel edge quicker if you just got on there and just sort of whipped a panel line on. Decades, yeah. It's not too long ago for me, but still, yeah, probably 4 years since I last played Battletech. Still got all my models. Stashed in the display cabinet, so rather proud of all the models, but not getting enough games in. I had 3 or 4 friends that were into Battletech. Now this is interesting conversation piece. Yeah, well, actually more like sort of 5 or 6 friends of mine were really big fans of the game and collected the models. They weren't really into the painting, so they got they paid for painting. but they were never interested in any other games. I don't know if that's true for the sort of general fan base of Battletech, but potentially, I think there's a lot of people out there that have played Battletech but haven't moved on or never really considered any other game. And that's certainly not the case for me, and a lot of my friends are. You know, they'll do everything from 40k to Malifaux, everything going really. But definitely think there are people that they get into Battletech and then they don't really move on to other tabletop miniature games. It's not really a thing for them, and that's definitely the case with these friends of mine. They still have these big collections, some of them on display, of Battletech models from back in the day, you know, late 80s, early 90s. But never moved on to play any other games. Just find it an interesting thing. Sorry, went off the stream there. Yeah, and actually I envy some of them, those people like Graham said there that just play limited range, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's actually really good, because you might, you know, I often see it with Battletech that people have huge collections and they've just stayed focused on the one game, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And say, like, I wish I could do the same thing, but magpie syndrome means I just keep on buying and getting into new stuff, and then eventually wrote my own game, Grunts, which then took even more time and energy up. Probably can't see where I'm painting there behind things. But slowly the chips are building up. Yeah, you definitely see that a lot in board games, and that's the other thing with Battletech. You know, the first 5 years I played it, it was never off a mat. Probably for the first 2 years, we probably didn't even put a coat of paint on a mech. We may have bought them and then just sort of stuck them on with some glue on a base. It was still enough to really, you know, enjoy the game. And that's some of my fondest memories are of games where some sort of amazing maneuver with jump jets got a model behind another model on the map. And, you know, it's thrilling stuff, even though as an aesthetic, a lot of people like the, you know, the 40k and the Warhammer idea, the vision of having a large table with trees and terrain and lots of armies. You can certainly get lost in a game which is just a cardboard hex map for Battletech without needing a lot of terrain and detail. So I'm down at the feet and you can't see what I'm doing. So just going around again, the same deal really, just using this blue to add an awful lot of chips across the whole thing, which, you know, again, they don't bear great scrutiny up close. But from tabletop, once I've detailed them in, they'll look adequately like chipping. And sort of mixed in chips and highlights. fact, there'd be a lot around the feet, wouldn't there? Crunching through all sorts of city terrain, rocks, debris, and I think this one's got jump jets. I can't imagine a paint job on a pair of feet lasting very long if it's 60 foot of 100-ton metal coming down on those feet. Even with good hydraulics, you're going to get a few scratches, aren't you? So yeah, I should go on quite heavy, shouldn't I, around the feet with this scratch technique, chipping. Yeah, plastic stands. I remember playing a game where we had maybe some infantry, which were just little cardboard tokens rather than mechs, but I think we always used some models. Quite early on we got into buying the models. Imagine maybe it's a long time ago. Imagine the first couple of games we had, we did just use the cardboard stuff from the boxed game. You know, they had those, like you say, flat standees. So you know, I'm terribly neglectful of the back around the legs. But again, I'm just sort of going on edges, really not. Most of this is in the shadow of the upper hull. Can you see anything I'm doing there? Yeah, feet would be down to bare metal. I wonder though, this is interesting, another sort of topic. I had some models, 15mm models that sort of an alien race. They were from Critical Mass Games, and at the time I'd recently got some new rust paints. I was determined to rust something up, so I was painting these Critical Mass models, and I thought at the time, these are an alien race and there's no way that they would build something that suffers from rust. But I did it anyway, and I rusted them up. And then I thought to myself, like we just said there about this being, you know, down to the bare metal, but potentially in whatever future time these mechs are stomping around will be in a point where maybe they can bond the steel with a colour or a plasti-steel you hear mentioned, kind of sci-fi steel, or some other composite that actually it would never discolour, never rust, it would never chip, because if it chipped, the base colour would still be revealed underneath the metalwork. But who wants to do that? You want to do more chips and just make things look weathered. So quite a lot of chipping around the back there. Oh, and those back legs, those back feet. Again, around the edges, just really quick. I am beginning to get my eye in now, so hopefully moving a bit quicker. And as you can see, it's not highly technical. I'm probably now rushing it. Well, also, as I said, this back bit's right on the legs, nothing's really going to spend a lot of time. I know I'm not going to be looking at it in detail. Where's that leg? Is that on show? Oh yeah, that's the whole thing with the sort of Omnimechs and things as well, wasn't it? That everything was bolt-on modular. This one isn't an Omni mech though, is it? Because Omnis were those ones where they had sort of a fixed hull and then they could quickly have different weapon systems sort of put on them. This one's, I don't know what the difference, normal mech compared to an Omni mech, but it's definitely a clan mech. I feel like I should do a little bit more on the top. Oh, that's not got in focus. You can see even when there's just a small amount left on my brush, I'm still kind of putting it on. So, well, I think I've done enough of the main chip. And then I'm going to use, so I'll zoom out just a moment, see it at a distance as well. Yeah, I think that's enough of the main chipping, and now I'm going to get the other colour, so I'll just show you that I'm doing that. Where's it gone? There was the blue. There they are, right in front of me. So I have iron hull grey, and I have this bloodstone. So I was going to put some of the bloodstone to darken the bits that are on the brown areas, and then the iron hull grey to darken that blue that I just used there. So just dropping a bit in the wet palette. And of course I've got loads of that blue left. I could have just put the tiniest smidgen of the blue on there. So I've just decanted that out of the pot into the wet palette. And the next one with iron hull grey. Yeah, I've done that chipping. I've got a pot of this stuff. I did buy hairspray, but then I got some chipping stuff. I think it was AK Interactive, which I've airbrushed on something. What did I use it on? I know what I used it on. I used it on some drop pods, 15mm drop pods, where I wanted to make them look like they'd been through the atmosphere, and I chipped them all up. But I didn't use a dark enough undercolour, so when I revealed the chipping from underneath that's been locked under the hairspray, it didn't have a high enough contrast with the last coat I put on, so it just didn't look very effective. So, and again, with this small scale, using the hairspray technique would be tricky. So now I'm going to zoom in and show some of this grey going on, which I've got in here, iron hull grey. And this is where I need to be even finer control, because I don't want to like put big blobs of grey on. I want to be able to put very fine lines of it into the existing shading there that I've put on. So trying to find a good example is difficult. Probably this is where I need to be in like higher resolution than what you can do when you stream anyway. So let's pick somewhere that's a bit more obvious. Try and get my eye in on it. There's one up there. So there's a good chip. So really, you want to go in got some paint off it in the end, but yes, I think my paintbrush had dried there. I'll get some more paint on the brush. So yeah, you're trying to darken inside where you put a chip. nose is a good spot to do it on, if I can get that into focus. And get my eyes in on it. So yeah. I don't know what I've done with this paint, but it just seems to be drying before it's even off the brush, which is certainly not the case on the last. I'm going to mix it up a bit. I think it's gone a bit dry in the pot. It's a bit thick. It's probably about a 6 or 7 year old paint that doesn't get used a great deal. And I've definitely got some on there this time. So yeah, it's a case of not covering up the white, but and not doing it on every section. It's too wet. Oh, it's gone off screen. So where I've done it is just around this sort of front area here. Up into the sections here. But I need to keep going because it's very sort of detailed bits and pieces. Doesn't look greatly impressive without doing a lot of it. And also it's taking me my concentration levels. Slight readjustment of things. Oh, that's it. I can actually see the subject matter now. So yes, you can start to see down here again the shine off this bit from the gloss that's still there that will go away is a bit distracting because you can sort of see the shine, but you can see I've put small patches of the grey inside the chips and it now looks like it's presenting a bigger chip with the shading in it. Here's another good example up there. Not every chip's going to be a big one, so I'm not going to put it on everywhere. Probably need some music playing at this point. Or with my concentration levels being high, I'm trying to get this right. Okay, so feet. So I could do a bit more. I'll go down to the feet and see if I can keep those in focus down there. Because I can be a bit bolder with the paint. Yeah, matte medium and distilled water I should put into something like this one, because it is, well, I'm obviously putting medium, mixing it with a medium on the palette, but it could still do with a bit better flow. Yeah, so hopefully you can see them working on the feet down there. Oh, probably moved out of focus. Yeah, I mean, it's a reasonable example, isn't it, down there with the old, on that foot where the darker colour's gone in. Maybe I can zoom in a bit closer. It might help the process. So still in focus that foot. You see it's starting to look pretty duffed up now, isn't it? Pretty scratched and beaten. What with the bigger chips going on the feet now. Try and keep it in some sort of semblance of focus. There's another leg and the back. I put a lot of the white on, well, the highlight of the blue on there. I'm just going to go back on with this. Is it in focus? Yes. Nearly in focus. Yeah, you can see the effects working well. For me, it seems like it's working quite well down there. Taking some of the harshness out of having white dots and making it looking a little bit more scratched up, chipped up, worn. And yeah, I think I mentioned earlier when I get to the to do a few more washes, grimy washes and things on top of this, it will take some of the sort of harshness out of that as well. You can see a bit up there. Yeah, it's looking pretty chipped up. Because I've zoomed in a lot, it's quite tough to get the focus right now, but given it's quite high detail, I think it's worth trying to keep it in sort of focus. As you can see, this technique going on. So when I look at this, I think, is that the hatch he goes in on the back there? Does the pilot clamber in that door? It's looking pretty chiselled up. There's some more there. Like I said, you don't need to put the dark colour in everything. And what I was going to do is going to use some of that brown, so that's probably what I'll switch to now. Make sure that's on there with its magnet. Yeah, if I zoom out a bit, get a bit more range of view on that. Yeah, so I can see some areas at the top which I could do the darker brown. Just along the side there too, there was some brown areas that I put some white streak on. So Theresa May resigned today as Prime Minister. Was teary-eyed. Continued seismic changes in British politics, which I'm trying to ignore now because it's been 3 years of it nearly now. I'd rather paint models. So does anybody know what the Battletech Alpha strike is like? I hear it's a bit of a lighter game, but I wasn't sure if anybody was aware. So I'm predominantly putting this brown on the areas that the darker brown chipping on the areas where there is brown. So there's a spot at the front there. So again, putting it inside the white. So you can see a good example. I mean, it's tough to see on such a small model, but up here, sort of the white chipping and then the darker lines inside look like deeper cuts, and it looks like the edge of a chip. So the whole thing is to give it that 3D chip look. And I just noticed the feet on this side need some more work because I'm just sort of rushing through. It's difficult to see where I am. You won't see anything I'm working on down here. I'm right underneath the legs, unfortunately, but I'm just going to get them done. So there it is. It looks kind of roughened up. It looks also like it's had a bit of highlighting done, despite the fact that I'm not really making an attempt to do any highlighting, just going on the edges. And yeah, it looks all right. It's worth having those kind of scratch type lines as well, just to sort of vary it up so it's not just all scratches on the sort of highlighted edges. And the nose is looking okay. Maybe I could put a couple of darker bits of the brown on the nose. Yeah, that's okay by me. And what is that? That's 50 minutes of chipping. Better than any other TV, I'm sure. But there we go. Right, so a brief breather. So just as a recap. So basically I've gone on with the chipping. And I've just used 3 colours. I used the Frostbite blue, which is very pale, because I wanted a paler colour than the quite light duckhead green that's on there. And this looked, I mean, because it had a kind of feel of a very pale grey, being Frostbite, a little bit of bluish grey in there. That felt about right. And then Ironhull grey, which is nice and dark to go into the dark areas on the chips. And also for the brown bits, I did a bit of that bloodstone as well. So that's it. Right, so washes then. So I have before me, I have blue burned exhaust. I have, which is from Life Colour, which is a pigment. They call it non-smelling washes, liquid pigment. So this is just to sort of darken up, and of course it's because it's liquid, because it's an acrylic is the word I was looking for. I've already put oils on there, and if I went on now with like an enamel wash or another oil wash and some thinners, proper, enamel thinners, it would start to strip off the oil that's on there already. So by using these, I'm just making sure that, and you can see the sort of colour, sort of a burnt blue exhaust style. By using these, I'm making sure I don't strip off existing paint because it's acrylic against the against those oils. So really with this, I'm going to decant a small amount of it. That's probably too much. Into a pot. And then I can then mix very small amounts of quite filthy water there to get the kind of blend I want, which is not too, because it can be diluted with water. So if I zoom in, show you what colour that is looking like now. It's a kind of a bluey grey exhaust stain. But I'm just thinning it down so I don't want to go on too heavy with it. And I realise really I should use a slightly bigger brush than that. So I'm going to use because I want to be controlled, but I'm using a number 0 Tamiya brush, so you can just hold a bit more of this wash, build it up sparingly, so I've just got a small amount on there. One thing you can do with these Life Colour washes is that you can strip them off. They come with like an acrylic thinner. I don't know how it works, but it can strip them. So this blue burned exhaust is nice because it's not black, it's kind of like a grey, and that means that you can go on quite heavy with not too much fear of a massive tide mark that you might get from like a black, like a non-oil or something going on. And I'm going over areas that have had chips as well, because they may have sort of dirt on. And you can see you still get a little bit of tide marking on there, but just trying to be a bit careful not to create too much in the way of tide marks where the acrylic sort of dries like a puddle. And this could represent anything. This could be that, you know, the chip has been a heavy laser strike or what have you, and there's a little bit of burning of the paint around it. Or in the case of the gun barrels, it's explosive exhaust or whatever exit residue. That's left its mark on the barrel. So there's a good example of slight sort of pooling. You can see that it has given it a tide mark. I call them tide marks. I don't want to go on too heavy with it, but you can see how it's quite subtle, really. It's given, it's almost like a filter, really, over the barrel, and that it has darkened it back up the barrel where I've put it on, but it's also not completely covered up the base colours on there. Yeah, and this colour again, it's the blue burned exhaust. I've left the top off the pot actually. Is that steady? Live colour washes. They're Italian paints, I think. Yeah. So I did the pin wash on here with the oil, but you can do that with acrylics as well, like these, to sort of add a bit of extra definition. There's some interesting areas like these bits inside the cowling around the edge of the main weapons, PPCs, I think. And then those areas on the feet, legs even. There's nothing wrong with putting a little bit more dark stain around there too. Sort of grease and grime. going in and around those sort of rear joint bits as well, with quite a lot of this stuff. Oh, and the kind of jump jet bits at the back, they deserve some sort of exhaust mess. Probably what I could have done inside these was paint some metallic or something, which I haven't done inside the jump jet bits. You say the benefit of this blue burned exhaust colour is that it is subtle. It's not, if I make a bit of a mistake, I'm kind of boosting some of the shadows in the panel lines as well while I'm working it. Pretty chipped up gun there. Okay. So after that brief moment of concentration, I'm mostly happy with that blue burned exhaust going on there. I'm now going to use some of the smoke. Again, another life colour. They call these ones Tensochrome. Tensochrome, don't know, maybe chrome. And they're just their washes. They're ones that they did before they did these non-smelling liquid pigments. They did these ones which were a whole variety of different kinds. This one is very dark. It's obviously like a black smoke. It's kind of transparent, but it's a lot heavier than the black grey. So I'd only use it really in, going to the front of the right at the front of the gun barrels to really darken them. And maybe these exhausty bits that you can't really see. But there are some exhaust holes on the side, if I could sort of blacken around there too. Yeah, I'm going on the feet again, sorry, you can't really see me down here. Unless I flip the thing around. I've gone into these sort of lights in here. I may come back and brighten those lights up. Even though I've shaded them, I could brighten up the center of those lights. So it's really darkened the ends of those barrels there, and will take a little while to dry. Have I missed anywhere? So what I could do, just because I'm on it, and I could just do this, I could get some silver now. Some bright silver. What have I got here? Radium platinum. So this is very bright silver. And just do some little bits on the barrel ends to make it look like bare metal on there. Shaking that up. Yeah, very small amount of this needed really. So this is radiant platinum, which is kind of the brightest of the privately oppressed metals. Of course, the problem with any metal-based metallic, is the word I was trying to get out, is it will, when you use your dull coat, it will dull it. So you're doing it here and you're thinking, oh, this looks nice and shiny on the front of the barrels, and of course it's not going to look like that once it's dull coated, but it will still show through just a little bit dull. Right, so that's been quite a lot tonight. And as I do it, I'm thinking, what am I thinking? I'm thinking maybe I now need to possibly put some stuff into the lights at the front down here, just to sort of give it some sort of glow inside there, maybe some bright yellowish lights sticking out from there. You can get it into focus. Too far away, that's it. Thank you, autofocus, for just sort of not working at all. Hey. No. Oh. I'm going to give up on that idea of staying zoomed out. Nearly done. That's it, I'm in focus. So, right, now we can see the chip in. You can see the stuff on the barrels and the feet. How that smoke has sort of really darkened up the barrels. Still got a lot of shine on here because it's not been dull coated yet. I need to do the base, and then I need to dull coat it, and then I'll be done. You know, I'm quite pleased with areas like here, with the way the sort of burn marks have come back onto that barrel and given it a kind of a burnished, smoked area. And I think it'll all come together quite nicely when the dull coat's on. It'll get rid of all that shine off the top of the canopy there and dull it down nicely. The feet are looking really beaten up. With all the chipping on there. So there we go. I'll just show as an example how a much more clean looking model. So I did a video for these guys a while ago, and you can see I've really done no chipping or weathering on this. It's got washes, but that's the other sort of style I often do, is I would just edge highlight and then use washes to bring it all together on this little mecha, which is like a spider droid. And you can see how much cleaner that looks compared to the sort of beaten up chip style. But yeah, I'll show the comparisons again once I've finished, which will be in the next video now, to just finish the base, and then I'll even then I'll dull coat. So that's it for tonight. Great. Move over that way. Oh, try and get the mic to me. Thank you very much for listening in, if you have. Obviously I was live, but don't expect everybody to be listening for this kind of length of time, nearly maybe an hour and a half. And I've done the chipping work on this. Next time I'm going to come back and just finish it, so it should be done in like half an hour. Just paint the base, dull coat it, and it's done. And yeah, that's it. So, well, have a good weekend. It's bank holiday weekend in the UK, so it'll be raining on Monday. However, enjoy the weekend while you can. I'll probably be back online over the weekend just because I've got a long weekend off, so I'll be doing bits and pieces. I'm playtesting tomorrow morning my Grunts version 2 rules for my rulebook,